Hey everyone, I'm coming to you with another video, kind of going over some of the text from How to Read Literature Like a Professor. Um, and so I want to kind of skip ahead to symbolism because I think that is the most important thing that we've covered lately. And so you need to think about symbols. Symbols don't have to just be objects. Symbols can be colors. Symbols can be music. Symbols can even be people. Like a person can act as a symbol. So don't just look for clocks and knives and pearls. Look for even more when you're trying to figure out what symbolism is going on in the text. So I have a few examples of symbolism in movies because that'll be a little bit easier to deal with. So in Inception, the spinning top is a symbol, and we see it several times. And in this like kind of dream-like reality that the characters in Inception weave in and out of so often, like they don't know what's real and what's not some of the times. So each of them has a talisman or totem to hold on to, something that will allow them to know whether or not they are in a dream or if they are still sleeping, or if they're awake finally. So the main character, Cobb, his talisman is a spinning top. And so at the end, it is just seen spinning and spinning and spinning. And we don't know if it falls over to let him know that he is back in the real world or still trapped in a dream. And the reason why the film director decided not to do that, or well, I don't know him personally, but what I can gather based on the symbol that the top represents, the reason he did that is because he doesn't want us to feel that we are comfortably situated in dream or in reality by the end of the film. He wants us to sit with the fact that both of these things bleed into each other. There isn't kind of a clear-cut delineation between them, and especially in the life of the movie. And then it serves to get us to question what is real and what is not, even in our own lives. So to keep it just spinning means that we're never really quite sure what is real and what is not. And that is what the top is doing there. There's also this little girl from Schindler's List, and the fact that she is standing here in the beginning of the movie, and we see her again at the end of the movie, and she is on a pile of dead bodies. So this is what I mean by a person can be a symbol. And so if we see her at the beginning when things are just starting to kick off with the Holocaust, we see her as like innocence. She symbolizes innocence, and she symbolizes like the fear and that we are still human as she lives, kind of that kind of thing. But when she dies, we realize that we have gone to the other side and we are no longer human, that because we have let so much of it kind of happen to these people, including little girls like that. There are a couple of others that I would point you to. Let me see here. I want to get just a picture of Ariel's tail right here in The Little Mermaid. So this is a story of kind of coming of age, and that, as she develops and gets into puberty, which is what this is all a metaphor for, she loses her tail and becomes a woman, right? And so the losing the tail, the wanting to walk where the people are, all of that is her trying to grow up. And so you can see that's why her father doesn't want her to grow up, why he is vehemently opposed to her relationship with Eric or trying to develop anything. It's just like she's trying to grow up and he's trying to stop her. And her tail is a big part of that. So another symbol that is interesting from popular film is the symbol of cotton in Get Out. And the reason this is important is because we're faced with a race-based situation, again, where this person is going to basically be enslaved in his mind by somebody else occupying his mind, which if you look at a black person, even though this is like a British actor and that's kind of like, messy, but if you look at this person and you see his black body and you realize that he's being confronted with the possibility of being enslaved, you automatically would think, well, when was the last time somebody was enslaved and they had a black body? Oh yeah, U.S. slavery. And what was the main thing? That was the crop in U.S. slavery, and that was cotton. And so, but he is taking this cotton and using it to save his life. So he puts the cotton in his ears to stop the process of mind enslavement that the people are trying to do here. And so it turns out to be like this tool or this crop that has been so fraught and so dangerous and harmful to Black people ends up being a thing that is going to save him from future enslavement. And let me think of one more. The Joker. And not just he as a symbol, he is, but what I specifically want to talk about is the cuts on his face. So it is like the cuts on his face are like to intensify his smile, at least. That is kind of how it is sold in the animated Batman. But what we see when we actually look at the Dark Rises Joker is like, yes, if you were to look at it in one way, you could see like, oh, he's got a really big smile. But when you really start to look at this symbol of smiling and what it really means, what it usually means, which is people are happy, things are going well, da 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 da. But what it means on him is something very horrible has happened to him, right? Like it's not, so this symbol of happiness, he's trying to take all of the things that are comfortable and kind of a part of a boring everyday life and turn them on their heads, even his face. So even the smile upon his face is actually quite ugly. And that is because it is made by what we assume is a painful attack and disfigurement, right? So things like that, how it can be a thing, it can be a person, it can be music, it can be color, it can be a lot of things. But there are things that an author buries in the text, maybe not bury, in the text to let us know that we should pay attention to this, that this is something that we're going to get a call back to. Like here, we see her in the beginning, we see her in the end, that kind of thing. So that's what you should look for if you're looking for symbols. The next thing to definitely be aware of is how political all literature is. It is like you cannot escape having your personal politics kind of play out in the novels and things that you create. I dare say, in my professional opinion, that there is no such thing as an apolitical novel that actually has a plot and characters and where things are resolved in any kind of way that makes sense. it's going to be political. So, for example, I know I use the Hunger Games a lot, but I'll just kind of click through some of these to let you know what are some of the questions that are being asked of books that you may have heard of before or not. But anyway, in the Hunger Games, the end of the book and the end of the movie, either way, ends with Katniss kind of settling down into a very predictable and settled life, which in some circles kind of undermines the feminist work that she's done throughout the whole series. So she's been really, a tough cookie. She's been kicking butt and taking names and freeing people and toppling the patriarchy, or at least toppling the Capitol, that kind of thing. But then all of a sudden we just end up with her kind of settling into a nice little middle-class life, with babies and marriage, and not doing anything huge and amazing as the rest of the story would suggest. Now, some of the story you could go in two different ways, like how, okay, it is feminist because she gets to choose to be married and to have her life not kind of be encroached upon by the Capitol. She's going to have kids, and they're never going to have to experience a Hunger Game. Right. But on the other hand, you could look at it like she's being sidelined in this really predictable kind of sentimental way, which doesn't fit. So either way, we're going to have to get into a conversation of what does it mean to be a woman, what does it mean to be happy, and what does it mean to be successful. And so it can't just be that's just how it ended. I mean, you're making a statement. And so by choosing the conclusion that the author chose. So you have to be aware of the politics that exists in the world. It doesn't mean that you have to agree with this being a feminist text. Maybe you're just like, it's a fun text. Shut up. Why are you doing this? But so you don't have to agree with it being a feminist text. But you have to be aware that feminism exists in the world, and perhaps it is playing out in this book, or in the end of this book. And so in the book, Foster's book, he kind of talked to us a little bit about Gulliver's Travels and how political that is. Fahrenheit 451, it just had a remake, in case you haven't read the book, but I know that it is about government control and censorship and wiping away information from people and making it so that they cannot access it. Because if you do not have books, then knowledge kind of stops, right? So it's kind of to get us thinking about how much control we give our government over our freedom of expression, and what do we give up when we see some of that control to them. So that's necessarily political as well. Okay, so those are the main things. I mean, there were some things about narrative violence that were interesting, but I think pretty straightforward about what happens. So violence is about the actual violence, but it's usually also about something else. And you need to look at what type of violence and what happens and what injuries are sustained in order to make sense of why a certain thing happens to a certain character. And then what the other characters kind of, how they respond to this violence. Do they move past it without even a remark, as a lot of times happens when there is sexual violence in a narrative, or do they stop and lament it? and actually seek out justice for the person. So think about that too. Think about what it means to be shot versus being stabbed. Stabbing is more personal. Strangulation is still more personal even then. Being hit with an implement versus being hit with a hand. I'm trying to think of other things. Think about if someone gets groped on a subway in a book. Now, you won't necessarily think of that as violence, but it is an assault. It is of a sexual nature. So what happens as a result of that kind of thing? So that's pretty much all I want to talk to you about for now regarding the prof. Just let me know if you have any questions. Okay.